August 6, 1945. At 8:15 a.m., the sun rose over Hiroshima. But in an instant, the sky became fire, the earth shook, and a city of 350,000 souls was turned to ash. Survivors say time itself stopped. The air ripped apart, shadows burned into walls, and silence followed louder than any sound. This is not just a story of war. It is the story of a single day that changed humanity forever. This documentary is told through the voices of survivors, soldiers, scientists, and historians. Hiroshima was not only a battlefield, it was a human tragedy, a moral question, and a warning to the future. From the Japanese schoolchildren walking to class, to the crew of the Enola Gay preparing for their mission, to the doctors who tried to treat the unimaginable, we will retrace the hours of August 6th in vivid detail. The day the sky fell, and the world entered the nuclear age. The road to Hiroshima. By the summer of 1945, the Second World War had raged for 6 years. In Europe, Hitler was dead, Berlin had fallen, and Germany had surrendered. But in the Pacific, the war dragged on. Japan, though battered and cornered, refused to surrender. Cities had been firebombed, ports blockaded, but the imperial military remained defiant. American leaders faced a grim reality. Invading Japan could cost millions of lives. The battles of Iwo Jima and Okinawa had already foreshadowed the cost. Thousands of U.S. soldiers dead, hundreds of thousands of Japanese, military and civilian alike, perishing in ferocious resistance. Archival sound. Faint static radio, wartime speech in Japanese. Meanwhile, in secret laboratories across the United States, scientists were racing to finish the most terrifying weapon ever conceived. The Manhattan Project, led by physicist Robert Oppenheimer and General Leslie Groves, brought together over 130,000 people, working in absolute secrecy, from Los Alamos to Oak Ridge. They built what they called the gadget, a weapon that harnessed the raw energy of the atom. Insert voiceover with Oppenheimer's real words. In the debate on the military use of the bomb, I did not oppose it. The first test, codenamed Trinity, was conducted in the New Mexico desert on July 16, 1945. Scientists described the explosion as brighter than 1,000 suns. Shockwaves shattered windows 100 miles away. Oppenheimer later recalled a line from Hindu scripture, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." The weapon worked. Now came the decision where and when to use it. Target: Hiroshima. Nagasaki, Kokura, Kyoto, and Hiroshima were among the targets considered. Hiroshima, a military city with factories, railways, and an army headquarters, was ultimately chosen. It had been largely untouched by conventional bombing, making it a pristine site to demonstrate the bomb's full destructive power. It was also symbolic. With a population of over 300,000, Hiroshima was a bustling city, a cultural center, a place where ordinary life went on. Children walking to school, shopkeepers opening their doors, soldiers drilling in the barracks. No one there knew they would become the first victims of nuclear war. Insert survivor voice. We thought Hiroshima was safe. There were no bombings. We thought the Americans had forgotten us. The decision in Washington. President Harry Truman, just months into his presidency after Franklin Roosevelt's death, faced a momentous choice. Advisors argued that dropping the bomb would shock Japan into surrender and end the war swiftly. Others questioned the morality of unleashing such a weapon on civilians. In the end, Truman authorized the use of the atomic bomb. His diary entry read, "This is the most terrible thing ever discovered, but it may shorten the agony of war by a year. We will use it so that military objectives and soldiers and sailors are the target and not women and children." However, the Japanese are savages, ruthless, merciless, and fanatical. The order was signed. The bomb was ready. The world was about to change forever. August 6, 1945, morning calm. Dawn broke over Hiroshima like any other summer morning. The sun rose over the Oda River, casting golden light across the tiled rooftops and narrow streets. Fishermen prepared their nets. Shopkeepers rolled up their shutters. Children, still rubbing sleep from their eyes, hurried towards school with satchels in hand. Housewives filled buckets at public pumps, cooking breakfast over small charcoal fires. The cicadas buzzed in the trees. It was hot already, a sweltering August day. The air was thick with humidity, the kind that made the skin damp and sticky. But to the people of Hiroshima, it was a day like any other. A city of contradictions. Hiroshima in 1945 was a city of contradictions. It was both a military hub and a place of ordinary life. Factories produced war materials, soldiers drilled in the barracks. But at the same time, streetcars rattled along tracks, merchants sold rice and vegetables, and schoolgirls laughed as they walked in clusters, fanning themselves against the heat. The city's castle, a proud fortress rebuilt in the samurai tradition, stood as a reminder of history, while the modern bridges tied neighborhoods together across the rivers. Hiroshima had been spared the firebombings that destroyed Tokyo, Osaka, and dozens of other Japanese cities. This made residents feel both lucky and uneasy. Why, they wondered, had their city been spared? Some whispered that Hiroshima was too beautiful to destroy. Others thought the Americans were saving it for something far worse. The night before, the night of August 5th had been tense. Air raid sirens had sounded, warning of possible bombers, but nothing happened. Families spent restless hours in shelters, only to emerge as the all-clear echoed through the city. By morning, the sense of routine returned. Mothers prepared their children for school. Men cycled to work at factories and offices. The train station bustled with travelers moving in and out of the city. A few soldiers marched past, their uniforms pressed, their expressions hard. No one imagined that high above them, across the Pacific, a mission had already been launched that would decide Hiroshima's fate. Survivors remember. Insert survivor voice, calm but haunted. I was 14 years old, walking to school with my best friend. We talked about our homework. We were laughing. We didn't know what was coming. No one knew. Another survivor's words. My husband went to work early that morning. He kissed our baby goodbye. I remember the smell of miso soup on the stove. Then the world ended. The sky above. By 7 a.m., the sky over Hiroshima was a perfect blue. A few scattered clouds drifted lazily across the horizon. Farmers outside the city bent low over rice paddies, their straw hats shielding them from the blazing sun. At 7:09, air raid sirens sounded again. American reconnaissance planes were spotted, but when the bombers did not appear, the alarm was lifted. Many residents assumed the danger had passed. Children continued toward their classrooms. Soldiers relaxed. Housewives hung laundry to dry in the morning heat. By 8 a.m., the city was fully alive. Streetcars clattered along. Church bells rang. Factory whistles signaled the start of shifts. Hiroshima was awake, unaware that in less than an hour, it would be obliterated. The final minutes of peace. At 8:09 a.m., 3 aircraft appeared in the sky, but too high for most to notice. They were the Enola Gay, the Great Artiste, and a weather plane, circling above the city. To the citizens below, they were specks against the sun. The air raid sirens remained silent this time. Nothing seemed unusual. On the ground, people went about their final moments of normal life. A girl fed her pet birds. A mother nursed her baby. Workers gathered at the military headquarters. Students lined up for morning assembly. It was a city at peace, standing on the edge of history's most violent dawn. The Enola Gay. While Hiroshima woke to an ordinary summer morning, high above the Pacific Ocean, a U.S. Army Air Force B-29 bomber named Enola Gay was on a mission that would change history forever. The crew, the Enola Gay, piloted by Colonel Paul Tibbets, carried a crew of 12 men. Their task was unlike any mission ever attempted before. Each man knew they were carrying a weapon of devastating power, but only a few understood just how unprecedented it was. They had been briefed on the basics, that the bomb could destroy an entire city, but no one could truly imagine what would follow. Alongside the Enola Gay, 2 other planes accompanied the mission. The Great Artiste, which carried instruments to measure the blast. A third plane, necessary evil, whose crew would photograph and record the event. Together, they formed the most fateful squadron of the Second World War. The bomb Little Boy. Inside the bomb bay of the Enola Gay rested Little Boy, a uranium-based atomic bomb weighing nearly 10,000 pounds. This was the first of its kind, a weapon built in secret under the Manhattan Project at a cost of nearly $2 billion. It had never been tested in combat. The bomb's design was simple yet terrifying. When detonated, it would unleash the power of nuclear fission, a chain reaction splitting atoms and releasing energy beyond anything humanity had ever seen. Departure from Tinian. The mission had begun hours earlier, at 2:45 a.m. on August 6, 1945, when the Enola Gay took off from Tinian Island in the northern Marianas. The air was thick and humid as the bomber roared down the runway. Mechanics, soldiers, and fellow airmen stood in silence, watching as the massive aircraft lifted into the night sky. On board, the atmosphere was tense but disciplined. Some crew members smoked cigarettes. Others sat quietly, lost in thought. The weight of their mission pressed down on them. Colonel Tibbetts' resolve. Colonel Paul Tibbetts later recalled, "I was told only one thing: drop the bomb and end the war. I believed it would save lives. That's what I held on to." To his men, Tibbetts appeared calm, confident, even stoic. But deep inside, each member of the crew wondered, what would happen when the bomb was released? Approaching Japan. At 6:07 a.m., the Enola Gay approached the Japanese coastline. The sun was rising, illuminating the islands below in golden light. From the cockpit, the crew saw nothing unusual. Fishing boats at sea, small towns dotting the coast, the landscape unfolding like a map. Their target was chosen not randomly, but strategically. Hiroshima had been spared conventional bombing raids, making it an ideal test site. Its military headquarters, factories, and railways made it a legitimate target. But it was also a city full of civilians, 350,000 people, living ordinary lives. The final orders. At 7:15 a.m., the order came. Hiroshima was clear of clouds. The Enola Gay adjusted its course. The city lay ahead, calm and unaware. Inside the bomber, the crew prepared. Bombardier Thomas Farabee aligned the sights. Navigator Theodore Van Kirk checked their position. Weapons Officer Parsons armed the bomb. In the silence of that high-altitude cabin, history ticked closer to detonation. The last calm above Hiroshima. At 8:09 a.m., the Enola Gay was directly above Hiroshima. The bomb bay doors opened. Below, the city glimmered in the sunlight. Its rivers sparkled. Its bridges stretched gracefully across the water. From 31,000 feet, it looked peaceful, almost fragile. At 8:15 a.m., Colonel Tibbetts gave the order. The bomb dropped. The flash, the moment the sky fell. At exactly 8:15 a.m. on August 6, 1945, time itself seemed to pause over Hiroshima. The descent of Little Boy. The bomb, nicknamed Little Boy, fell silently through the morning air. For 43 seconds, it drifted downward, a dark cylinder tumbling against the bright sky. Below, Hiroshima continued its morning routine. Commuters crossed bridges. Schoolchildren gathered in playgrounds. Housewives prepared breakfast. Farmers in nearby fields worked under the sun. No one looked up. No one knew that death was falling toward them. The flash. At 1,900 feet above the city, Little Boy detonated. In an instant, the world split open. A blinding flash, brighter than the sun, ignited the sky. People miles away recalled seeing it as a ball of white fire, searing their eyes even if they turned away. For those near the center, there was no time to react. The light was the last thing they ever saw. The heat wave. The flash unleashed a fireball of unimaginable heat, over 7,000 degrees Celsius at its core. Within a radius of 1 kilometer, human beings were simply incinerated, their bodies vaporized. Buildings turned to dust. Shadows of people, frozen in their final moments, were burned into stone steps and walls. Those further away were scorched. Skin melted. Clothes burst into flames. Roof tiles bubbled like molten wax. The shockwave. Then came the shockwave. A violent wall of compressed air tore across the city at hundreds of miles per hour. Houses exploded. Windows shattered into shrapnel. Wooden structures collapsed instantly, trapping families inside. People who had survived the flash were hurled into walls, crushed under debris, or pierced by flying glass. The entire city of Hiroshima, in just seconds, was reduced to rubble and fire. Voices of survivors. Eyewitnesses later described it. It felt as if the sun had fallen from the sky. I saw people with their skin hanging from their arms, walking like ghosts. Children called for their mothers, but no one could answer. The mushroom cloud. From the Enola Gay, the crew watched as a colossal mushroom cloud rose into the heavens, a billowing tower of fire, smoke, and ash, climbing more than 40,000 feet into the sky. They had never seen anything like it. Even at their altitude, the shockwave rattled the plane. One crew member whispered in disbelief, "My God, what have we done?" The city of Hiroshima was gone. Hiroshima in flames. The survivors' struggle. The bomb had fallen. Hiroshima was no longer a city, but a burning graveyard. The firestorm. After the flash and the shockwave, fire consumed what was left. The intense heat ignited wooden homes, tatami mats, and furniture. The rubble itself became fuel. Soon, a massive firestorm swept through the ruins, pulling oxygen from the air and creating winds strong enough to uproot trees. Those who had survived the initial blast now faced a new terror, being burned alive. The survivors' march. Amid the flames, a strange and horrifying sight appeared, lines of survivors, staggering through the debris. They were burned, blinded, and bleeding. Their clothes had been blown off, their skin hung in strips from their arms. Many held their hands out in front of them, in grotesque postures, because the pain of burned flesh made it impossible to let their arms touch their sides. Witnesses said they looked like ghosts wandering through hell. Children in ruins. Thousands of school children had been gathered for work duties that morning. Many were near the hypocenter,